Hey everyone, so you clicked on this video probably because you saw these beautiful floating nightstands in the thumbnail, or you came to see me. Today we're going to build these and it's going to be quite simple and you'll only need a few tools. If you're wondering where my other nightstands are that I built in a previous video, well now we own 3 different Airbnb properties, so we've been shuffling around some furniture. I made a few of these floating nightstands for those units and we've already gotten comments from the tenants on where they should buy them, and I'm like, kind of have to build them. Come watch this video. Well, let's get on today's build.
The width of mine are 17 inches, the height is 7 inches, and the depth is 10 inches. That means I can get away with using one 8-foot long piece of 1x10 inch wood.
So even during this COVID market where lumber is expensive, these nightstands are cheap.
I'll cut my top and bottom pieces to the full width of 17 inches. I'll need 4 of these total. If you have a sliding miter saw, it's much easier to cut a 10-inch board, but in my case I have to flip it over and cut the other half.
Alright, so I'll need 4 total of these for 2 nightstands. Instead of measuring every piece, you can use a piece that you already cut, put it on top of the piece that you are cutting, line up the edges, and then just trace it. And there you go, you have your cut line. Then my side pieces are going to be 5.5 inches long, or I guess tall, so I'm going to go ahead and cut 4 of those now. You can see once again how simple this is. All my cuts are complete. The install is the only somewhat tricky part, so wait till the end.
Lining up the sandpaper holes with the actual sander holes allows for the sawdust to go into those holes and into the dust collector. Sanding is the same for almost all of my projects, starting with 120 grit and then going back with 220 grit sandpaper.
I've laid out my nightstands how I kind of want them, and now that I know which sides will be the corners that are facing the room, I'm going to round out the edges so this doesn't look like a cheap boxy project, although again, it's going to be very cheap. Before I get to staining these, I'm going to take them over to the room and mark where the studs are going to be lined up so I can get my pocket hole locations here. So let's head in there. Alright, I have a stud finder here and I'm going to be marking the studs on the left and right side of the bed. And to do this, I use a trick using painter's tape. Painter's tape. And usually an outlet is a good sign that there's going to be a stud here as well. And a bunch of electricals, so let's find it. Got one stud there. Maybe a stud there. That doesn't look like 16 inches, so we'll see. Yeah, that's probably our real stud right here. On this side I just have one stud in this area.
Since my nightstands are only 17 inches wide anyway, there's a good chance I'll only get to screw into one stud because studs are typically 16 inches apart, but that's completely okay. Then I'm holding up the top shelf to the wall where I want to install it and mark on the shelf where the studs are. And then I'm going to do the same with the bottom shelf, or just line up the shelves together since the stud should run exactly straight up and down. And then now I'll hit the other side of the bed and do the same exact thing. With my markings here, I can drill in the pocket holes, so let's go back outside.
This is a pocket hole Kreg Jig and it helps you make angled holes.
And it's as simple as lining up the pocket hole jig with the marks I made, setting it about 1/4 inch away from the edge of the board, and then drilling with the provided drill bit. Then just finish drilling up the holes on the rest of your shelves.
And for the side pieces, I'll drill 2 pocket holes facing upwards on each side. And these will be on the inner side of the nightstand, so you won't really see them.
Doesn't really matter too much about the measurements of these screws, but just for consistency's sake, I'm going to put them 2 inches in from each side of my side pieces.
The last step of prep work here is to stain and then poly all of the pieces that we just cut. I like to do that before I assemble everything, so that way there's no visible raw pieces of wood in the corners and seams of all of the pieces here. We've moved from the messy shed over to the not as messy garage, so we can begin staining these pieces. My wife still thinks that we're gonna park a car in here someday.
First, I'm going to wipe down the shelves with a damp rag since I just sanded all of these down. The process I'm going to use is applying the pre-stain, the actual stain, and then a clear coat polyurethane at the very end. Pre-stain fills in the pores in the wood so that when you come back in 5 to 15 minutes with the actual stain, there won't be any blemishes or patchy work. It makes the finished product look much better, again, especially if you're using cheap pine wood like I am. When applying stain, you want to make it go in a single direction, and you also want to do long strokes with your rag, unlike I'm doing here in this video, but that is just the bottom of the shelf, so who cares? But you can see here I go a little bit longer streakiness here, and just keeps it much more uniform.
Alright, I'm gonna wait about 24 hours now that the stain is on here to finish drying up before I start applying the clear coat, which I'm going with the semi-gloss by Minwax here. It's a polyurethane and it's meant for oil-based stains, which this is. So I will see you all in 24 hours. Probably keep my same painting clothes on here so I don't dirty up my other stuff. I love all the wardrobe changes it takes in these videos. I let these dry overnight and now it's time for the clear coat. I'm gonna clear coat the bottom sides or the less visible sides first, so that way I can flip them over kind of early and then clear coat the top of them. And I'm okay if there's some flaws and defects with the bottom side, just so I can get this done a little bit quicker, because you need 2 coats on all sides. With these pieces now dry on the first coat, I'm going to lightly, very lightly sand them down with 120 grit, preferably 220 grit sandpaper. I'm just gonna use 120 today. And I'm going to then do a last second coat on the top parts or the visible parts on the nightstand. So not the sides with the pocket holes, but the top sides like this here, and then do the second coat. It's time to install these shelves now. I'm going to use 2-inch Kreg screws here. You could opt for something like 2.5 inches if you'd like, but these have been doing just fine for me.
I have my Kreg screws pre-drilled into my shelf here, and that just frees up some hands so I can get this thing level before drilling it in. And here I'm just making sure that the side piece makes it where the bottom won't be interfering with the outlet I have just below it. So just a quick measurement there. And then now I'll check to make sure that it's actually level once one screw is in there. And then now I could pivot this shelf off of that one screw before tightening in this second screw. Now I'm going to apply some wood glue to the tops of the sides. I'll do the same for the bottom of the sides in a later step. And I'm going to rub it in here because I get so many comments on my YouTube videos about how spreading out the glue is just the most important thing ever. To screw these into the actual top, I'm going to use 1 1/4 inch Kreg screws. Remember, the top shelf into the wall I use 2 inch. Here I'm using 1 1/4 inch because you don't want it to puncture through the top, obviously. With that, you want to line it up with the ends and go ahead and screw it in until it's nice and snug. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the right part of the side shelf. Again, smearing in the glue to please all of you guys. Here's my tried and true Ryobi nail gun. I use this thing for everything now. And so what I'll do here is apply the wood glue to the bottom shelf where the sides are going to meet up with it. I don't know how well this actually holds on and bonds with the wood, with the polyurethane and all that on there. But still, it's not really doing all that much anyways. I have all these screws and nails going into it. So I'm going to tack in the 18 gauge brad nails into the bottom of this, into the sides. So that way it's up there, it's firm, and now I'll screw it in.
This top shelf alone was actually very sturdy just with the 3 nails or screws I put in there, and only one hit a stud, I believe. I don't think we actually hit this far right stud over here, but just that one alone was sturdy. Then if you think about the addition of the second shelf, not only is that just the support of 3 more screws, but now you have all of this surface space and I guess however leverage works, right? Putting pressure on this top shelf now disperses all of that pressure across all of these pieces of wood rather than one single plank. So this whole thing, it's not even wiggling, it's not jiggling, it's not going anywhere. It's gonna be good. And now 3 sets of these bedroom nightstands have survived the tenants in my Airbnb properties for, I don't know, 2 or 3 months now. They're gonna survive a few guests who stay in my own personal house or your personal house. I have no worries about these at all. But if something were to happen, I've already thought this through, there'd be no harm in adding a big L bracket or something like that back in here. You would be able to see it. I would spray paint it black or something. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. It would still look pretty cool. So I'm not worried.
I'm going to measure the height of my right nightstand and make sure that this left one is level with where that one's at. I'm also going to measure the distance in between my headboard too, because my headboard is actually fixed to the wall here, so I can't adjust my bed to the left or right to make up for any unalignment there. Other than that, the process on this nightstand is the exact same as the other nightstand that we have previously done.
And there we have it. After a few hours of work and $20 later, we have these beautiful, modern, and simple nightstands. I love how they match the floating LED headboard I made and how truly easy they were to make. When you do this, you'll be surprised just by how sturdy they are, and you can even opt to use sheetrock screws on the holes that don't line up with any studs. That's completely up to you. Anyway, I hope you guys liked this video. Please remember to hit that like button as a free way to show your support. And remember to subscribe so you can see more videos just like this, including my other nightstand build videos and this LED headboard build video. All of this was super easy to make, so I'll see you all on those videos. Peace.